I'm Cade Brewster, founder and CEO of Brewster Consulting Group. And today I'm going to tell you the questions that you should really be asking if you're interviewing someone about Power BI. Now, I did a lot of prep work getting ready for this video. I went out and Googled what interview questions should you ask about Power BI, and I read a lot of the articles. And it was disturbing to find that many of the articles had a list of like 60 plus highly technical questions that you should ask in the interview. And let's just be real. That's not the way that you want to conduct the interview, and asking highly technical questions in the interview is not going to get you the best person for the job. The reason for that is because nobody is sitting up late at night before their interview with you going over a study guide, memorizing functions and formulas and how you do different things in Power BI, right? There's a bare minimum technical capability that you have to vet. And so we're going to have a couple questions to qualify their technical capabilities. But we're really going to hone in on something that's more important, which is the business impact that they can bring to your business. Now, to set the stage for that, I'm going to explain something that I put out on Twitter a couple of days ago, and I want to reemphasize. When you talk about analytics people who are good in business intelligence tools and things like that, they fall into really two camps of people. You have people who have come from an engineering or technology background. So they started more on the tech side, and then they kind of transitioned their way into analytics. And then you have people who started on a business operations side, and then they kind of transferred their way or transitioned their way into analytics. Now, the reason why it's important to distinguish between the two is because the people who came from a tech side have more technical skill, but the people who come from the business side drive more business value. I'm going to say that again. The people from the tech side have more technical skill, but the people from the business side drive more business value. I came from the business side. Now I've become very technically proficient in Power BI, but there are still plenty of people out there, I'm sure, who are more technically proficient in Power BI than I am. But I would wager that I have driven millions of dollars in more value in the content that I've produced than people who are highly technical but don't have that business connection. You want people who can connect to the business and the needs of the business, and who build content in Power BI that is going to drive value for the business. So with that being said, today we're going to cover 10 questions that you should ask in your next interview where you're interviewing somebody to come do Power BI at your organization. These questions are specifically chosen to vet their minimum technical capability and then their ability to apply analytics to the business, so that when you hire somebody, you're going to get somebody who's actually going to drive value for your business. Okay, let's jump in. All right. Question number 1. You're going to ease them into this thing. Ask them to compare Power BI and Tableau. Okay, so you're probably wondering why ask them to compare two tools when they're only going to be using one of them in this job. Well, for starters, it gives you a feel for their level of knowledge on the industry. Those are the two biggest players in business intelligence, and so it'll give you kind of some baseline knowledge around how they operate. Number 2, listen to how they describe the differences, because the things that they call out as differences will give you an understanding of their level of technical knowledge. This is really just an easy introductory question, but what it does is it starts to allow you to listen and get a feel for what's actually important and noticeable to the person that you're interviewing when they're using these solutions. So you want to just listen to what they call out as the specific differences. It'll give you an idea of their technical understanding of both. And if they don't know a ton about Tableau, that's not a big deal. It'll still be advantageous to just see how they describe both of them. Question number 2, ask them, what is the most impactful report or dashboard that you have built? Now, this is an important question to ask because this is where you will start to differentiate folks who are overly technical and folks who have really good business knowledge. What I'm looking for when someone answers this question is people who cite actual business outcomes for the most impactful dashboard they've ever built. If they talk about the technical details or how pretty the visualizations were or anything around the system itself, that's a little bit of a red flag that they might be more of a technical type persona than they are a business type persona. But if they have good examples of we were able to build this and it helped us save $50,000, or we were able to build this and it helped us optimize our pipeline and grow revenue by $150,000. If they're using real numbers and real business outcomes as describing the impact that they've had with content that they've built, then that's the type of person who has that business level insight that you're looking for. So this is one of those early questions in the interview process where you can start to gauge that. Question number 3. Give me an example of not knowing how to do something in Power BI and having to learn it quickly. The reason why you ask this question is to gauge their resourcefulness. They are inevitably going to run into something they don't know how to do in Power BI at some point to be able to solve the problems that your business needs solved. So you need to understand how effective they are at going out and finding resources to solve that problem. There are a million resources available. Power BI has a very active online community. Shoot, you can go to ChatGPT and type in prompts and it'll tell you how to do something in Power BI. So there's a lot of resources out there. You're just trying to gauge and hear from the prospect how resourceful they are and how quick they are at finding those answers. Question number 4. Tell me about the most complicated dashboard you've ever built. This question is important for 2 reasons. 1, it'll help you gauge their technical capabilities. The way that they describe it will help you get a better understanding of their technical knowledge and their abilities within Power BI. But the second thing that you want to really listen for is what were the drivers of the complexity. And if they don't really expand on that piece, ask kind of a follow-up question, like why were you trying to do this? What were the drivers of it? Because what you want to hear from them is that you want them to be able to explain the business need and the business scenario that caused the complexity, right? Because when you're building dashboards, you're doing them for business lines and there are requirements that you're trying to work through. And so they need to be able to understand why it was important that they did whatever it was they're trying to do, and they understand what the business drivers were that added that level of complexity into their development. So make sure that you listen for both of those 2 components in the answer to this question. Question number 5. This is our tech stack. How would you integrate Power BI? Okay. This one is important because you want the prospects that you're interviewing to understand the technical environment that they're walking into, and you want to see how much they know about the applications and systems that you guys already use. So one of the things that you're going to do when you ask them about the tech stack is you're just going to look for their level of knowledge of what exists and how they can discuss integrating Power BI into that environment. Now, it's a pretty straightforward question, right? You either have a data warehouse that you're probably going to lay Power BI on top of to create a layer of reporting, or you don't have a data warehouse and then you're doing a bunch of reporting from different systems, whereas they're going to have to hook up to different data sources in Power BI in a variety of different ways and pull that in. So that might test their knowledge about connectors a little bit, but primarily you just want to see how familiar they are with the tech stack that you're going into. Question number 6. When have you created a great dashboard, but it failed to have the desired impact? What did you learn from that experience? This question is really useful because it helps you gauge their ability to learn and adapt based on what the business actually needs. If somebody has built enough dashboards in their life, they 1000% have encountered a situation where they built something that they thought was awesome and the business was like, what do I do with this? And so they had to adjust, they had to learn from it. And so this question allows you to gauge the depth of their experience, but also their ability to integrate themselves into a new environment, learn from what their end users actually need and will respond to, and then revise their style or the way that they're building visuals so that it's going to drive the most value for their business partners. Question number 7. What DAX or M function do you use the most? This question is another one of those that kind of vets technical skill. Now, it doesn't really matter if they answer with M or a DAX function. M is what you're going to use on the back end of Power BI and Power Query. DAX is what you're going to use on the front end of Power BI when you're building the actual dashboards themselves. The only real red flag here is if they don't have an answer at all. That means that they probably haven't done it enough to develop a consistent one, because one thing when you build a lot of dashboards is you get used to a certain way of building them, and you'll have some functions that you go back to repeatedly to set up and structure the data the way that you want it to be. So they should have an answer here. It doesn't really matter which one it is. The only red flag is if they don't have one, but you can listen to their description of what the most common one is. And one thing to pay attention to is it one that's super common? Is it one that is a little bit of an outlier and it's interesting that they use it, right? You can learn a little bit here, but the main purpose is just to do a little bit more vetting from a technical expertise perspective and make sure that they have an answer, which will indicate that they've built enough that something comes to their mind like that. Question 8. How did you learn Power BI? So there's not really a negative answer here, because really, if you can learn something, however you learn best is a good thing. Just go ahead and learn it. But what I'm looking for here when I ask this question is just to understand more about their learning style, right? How motivated are they to go find the answers and learn something when they don't know it? Did they learn in college, in a course, which might give me a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit of concern, because college courses are notorious for giving you like super clean data sets that don't mimic the real world. Did they learn in the real world? Like they actually worked for a business, they needed to use Power BI to solve a problem, and so they started playing with it, and that's how they figured it out. Did they learn by, doing courses on their own, online, on their own time? Did they learn by watching YouTube videos? Like I said, there's not necessarily a negative answer here, but you can learn a lot about the learning style of the individual and how they go after learning new information when they need to, just by kind of digging into how they learn to use Power BI in the first place. Question number 9. How often do you meet with stakeholders when you're developing a dashboard? Okay, this is one of my favorite and one of the most important questions in this video. So if you ask this question and you get an answer like, well, hopefully the requirements are right, and then we only have to meet once, but if the requirements document is filled out wrong, then we might have to meet another time after that to make sure that we get it right. Tell them thank you for coming out and send them home. You do not want to hire them, because that is somebody who wants to be an order taker and just wants to take requirements and build what people ask for. And the problem with that is that people don't know what they want. If their answer is instead something like, well, I meet with the business, I understand the business need, maybe I process map out the process that we're looking at, or I do some other type of interactive activity to better understand the business need, and then I build an initial draft, and then I iterate with them on that draft to try to optimize it. If the answer is something more like that, that's exactly the type of person that you want, who's going to engage and really immerse themselves in the business to be able to identify how they can drive value for the business. But if they mention requirements, and if they mention like it's a bad thing if you have to meet more often, like red flag, tell them thanks for coming out, give them their parking vouchers, and send them home. And finally, question 10. What attributes are most important for an effective dashboard? All right, this is our last question, and this question is gauged to really try to understand how they think about what they build as a BI developer from an end user perspective. So when you ask them what the most important attributes of a successful dashboard are, it should be things like speed to insight, data storytelling, relevance to the business, interactivity, performance so that people actually use it, user adoption, things like that, right? Those are the types of things that you're looking for. So make sure whatever it is that their answers are coming from the angle of how do I get my end users to use this? Because getting end users to use what you build is the only way that BI is actually valuable. If nobody uses it, it's not valuable at all. So you need to drive that end user adoption. This question is to gauge how they think about what the most important characteristics are that can help drive that use by your target stakeholders. Okay, let's do a quick recap now. I know that was a lot, and that was kind of a longer video than I would have liked. So I'm going to do a quick recap of what we went through. If you want to hire an absolute killer at Power BI who is going to take your organization to the next level, these are the questions you ask. First, ask them to compare Power BI and Tableau. Second, ask them about the most impactful dashboard that they've ever created. Third, ask them for an example of not knowing what to do in Power BI and having to go out and learn the answer very quickly. Third, ask them about the most complicated dashboard that they've ever built, including why it was complicated. What were the drivers behind the complexity? Fifth, tell them what your tech stack is and ask them how Power BI should overlay with that. Sixth, ask them about a dashboard that failed. Why did it fail and what did they learn? 7, ask them about their most commonly used DAX or IM function in Power BI. 8, ask them how they learn Power BI. There's a lot to learn about them based on how they learn the system. 9, ask them how often they meet with stakeholders when they're building a new dashboard for someone. And finally, ask them what they believe are the most important attributes of a successful Power BI dashboard. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. I know it was a little bit longer than I would have liked, but I hope it's valuable for you. Trust me, don't read the articles online. Don't read the crap that Google pulls up. If you want to hire an absolute rock star in Power BI for your organization, these are the 10 interview questions that you need to ask. No more, no less. Use active listening while you talk to the prospect. Make sure you take good notes and really think about what their answers are. Come back, refer to this video to remind yourself kind of what you should be looking for as you listen to them. If you follow those steps, if you ask these questions, and if you look for the things that I outlined in the video, you're going to hire somebody who will absolutely take your business to the next level when it comes to your analytics environment. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, hit the subscribe button. Appreciate you guys. We'll have more videos coming your way soon. Thanks.